Okay, so let me go ahead with the class. Okay, right? I will take a moment to share my screen so that I can do this presentation for you. I can bring in this presentation for you. Okay. Okay, here we go, right? I just need a simple confirmation if you all are able to see the presentation, if you're able to view the presentation.
Yes, Gaurav.
Okay, great, great. Thank you. Thank you. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. Okay. So today's class is called Why the Best Parents Are Healers, right? So we have heard a lot about conscious parenting, how to be a good parent, how to train your child, how to train yourself to train your child. All of these things we have learned. But then I'm going to speak about something different in the sense that how our intergenerational experiences and our inherited family traumas shape us as parents, add to who we are, our personality as parents, how all of these can also trickle down and percolate to our children as well, right? So here is, so we are going headlong into it actually, right? So the first question that you need to ask is, who are our children? Who are our children, right? Are they reflections of us? Are they what we train them to be? Are they extensions of us? What are they? Who are they? And the answer to that is our children actually exist within us even before we are born. How does that happen? And how is that true? So let's look at hard science, first of all, before we go into understanding it from a more spiritual perspective. And the hard science is when our grandmom has our mom in her womb, and our mom is just 4 months, at that time, grandmom's blood is flowing into our mom's body, and well, our mom's blood from a little body is also going into grandmom's body, right? And then there is an exchange that happens through the placenta. Now, when mom is just 4 months inside grandmom's womb, she is beginning to form her gonads, right? And that's where she develops the eggs. And those eggs are in a state of, let's call it frozenness, which will later develop into full-formed eggs. Now, these eggs that are there in mom's small little body while she's in grandmom's womb, these eggs are the eggs which will later be fertilized by our dad's sperm, and that's how we will be born. Okay? So isn't it fascinating to realize that we are already there while our mom is a little fetus inside our grandmom's womb, right? And everything that happens to grandmom's body, everything that grandmom feels, all the hormones, neurochemicals that grandmom feels and emerges and comes out and becomes a part of her bloodstream is directly going to affect the bloodstream of our mom and eventually to us. So let's see how that happens, right? But the first thing to remember is our children are in us even before we are born, okay? So this is a rather a little complicated. Let me explain this slowly to you, okay? I'll minimize my screen so that I can explain it to you fully. So don't feel that, oh my God, what is this? So I'll just explain it to you step by step, okay? So here is grandmom. Look at this figure as my cursor moves. Here is grandmom, okay? And here is granddad. Now let's assume granddad has an affair, okay? Or granddad goes away. Or let's say granddad loved someone else before he loved grandmom or before he married grandmom, and his attention and energy is there, out there. He's looking out for that, right? What is grandmom going to feel? What are her feelings going to be like? She's going to be, of course, stressed, right? She's going to be stressed. Second thing is definitely she's going to feel rejection, isn't it? Right? And then, of course, she's going to feel abandoned as well. She will feel also devalued because she'll feel that I don't have any value. You know, this man, he's not there with me. He's stuck in somewhere else. She'll, of course, feel betrayed. She might feel powerless. She may also feel insignificant, right? Now, as a result of all these feelings, what's going to happen to her body? What's going to happen to her bloodstream? She's pregnant with our mom. She's pregnant with her mom. What's going to happen to her bloodstream? One thing is for sure, her stress hormone levels are going to shoot up. Isn't that so? So the stress hormone that is commonly known is cortisol. So cortisol levels are going to shoot by the roof. That's what is going to happen. Norepinephrine levels are going to shoot by the roof, right? Of course, her blood vessels are going to constrict. She will definitely have high blood pressure levels because, of course, now she's stressed, she's tensed, right? And all of this is going to be the inner environment of this little baby who is our mom, right? This little baby, all of this that grandmom is feeling is going to be the inner environment of this. So this baby is going to not only feel all these feelings that grandmom is feeling, but scientifically, despite all these feelings, what the baby is going to experience is a lot of stress, because when our mom's body is in stress, she leads to creation of stress hormones. It's going out there in the bloodstream. It's going to pump out glucose, because that's what stress hormones do. They pump out a lot of sugar and glucose, because when you are stressed, what do you want to do? You want to like fight the situation, or you want to simply run away from that situation. You want to flee. These are the kind of things you want to do. So you need a lot of power and strength to do that, right? So glucose is pumped out into the blood as a result of all that stress. And that little baby who is inside, you can see this little baby, what this little baby is also going to feel is, oh my God, you know, I'm living in this womb. This is my world, and my world is full of stress hormones. It's a sea of cortisol. It's a sea of stress hormones. So the baby is also going to now produce stress busting hormones, because it has to cope with the stress in its environment, right? That's why we say that mother's womb is the metaphor for our environment, right? So the baby's environment is also filled with stress, you know, rejection, abandonment, devalued, powerless, right? Who is our mother? Who is our mom? Now, mind you, she's carrying these eggs. She's carrying these eggs, right? Which will later be fertilized and we will be born, right? So these eggs, what exactly happens? What happens to these eggs? These eggs have what? They have DNA, right? Deoxyribonucleic acid, which is basically the fundamental element of our genes. Isn't that so? Right? So recent research shows us that there is a field of science called epigenetics. Epigenetics is beyond genetics, which means that our gene expression can be affected, right? That it does not matter whether you carry a gene for, let's say, diabetes, or you carry a gene for schizophrenia. It does not matter. The environment in the gene the environment around the gene can determine, the stress around the gene can determine whether the gene is going to be switched on or whether it's going to be switched off. And when environment determines the expression of a gene, that field is called epigenetics, right? It's called epigenetics. There are many methods by which it happens, but I'm not going into the science part of it. You can read it out. You can always DM me. I can always tell you about it. right? DNA methylation and histone modification, these are different ways. But let me come back to the main part. The main part is that the genes are, they get added with these different epigenetic tags as a result of all these feelings and emotions, right? So their expression changes, the gene expression changes, right? Now, finally, we are born and we are grown up, and you can look at this woman who could be us, right? Who could be us. And this woman then maybe falls in love with a man, and the man is also probably loving and affectionate and nourishing. But then what happens is she starts experiencing feelings of clinginess, a lot of anxiety, a lot of hypervigilance, and she becomes doubtful of her partner. So somehow she is repeating the experience of this woman, of her own grandmom, because through mom, all of this is getting epigenetically transferred, right? Now people will say, well, how is that possible? The answer is epigenetics. Epigenetics proves us that our gene chemistry, our gene expression is impacted and influenced by the inner environment that where the genes actually were formed, which is our mom's body, right? So what could be the physiological effects then? These are emotional effects. Being clingy, being anxious, being hypervigilant, being doubtful of her partner are emotional effects. What can be the physiological effects? The physiological effects can be that because everything was stress bound, mom's body was stress bound, eggs were in a lot of stress, the genes kept on feeling stress, stress, stress. What does stress make us do? As I said, it pumps, glucose into the bloodstream, sugar into the bloodstream, right? Blood vessels constrict, right? What another thing that happens in stress is that your gut, which is responsible for digesting your food and all of that, all the blood from the gut is pumped out and given to the muscles, because the muscles need blood and glucose during stress to function. So as a result of which, of course, there is high BP because it's so much of bloodstream, going up. Diabetes and high glucose is a natural response to high stress because the bloodstream is being pumped with glucose as a result of stress, right? And to cope with stress, we don't have a coping mechanism. In order to cope with all that neediness, clinginess, and hyper anxiety that mom experienced in the womb, we cope with it probably by addiction. Sometimes we may also cope with it by eating disorder, because what happens is our gut can no longer feel the food, because all that blood is constantly pumped out all the time, even without our knowledge. That becomes a default mechanism of the body into the bloodstream, because our natural response to life is stress. So you can see that there are emotional stress responses, and then there are physiological stress responses. And mind you, this girl or this woman, or it could be us, did not even go through the real experience of losing her husband to someone else, but that is what she feels in her life, right? Let this sink in for a while. Let this sink in for a while. Right. I hope everyone has got this. I would like if some of you or all of you could just type, yes, yes, we got it. Yes, we got it. If you could just type. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Amazing. 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 Thank you. Okay. Okay. So let's move on to the next one then. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm going to go into science a little bit. It won't get boring, I promise. It won't get boring. Okay. So let's look at some of the recent researches. So, and these I'm giving you so that you can go back, you can pull out your internet. I know all of us are on Facebook, Instagram, and we are constantly searching and browsing. So you can take some time out of that and try writing down the name of these genes that I'm going to provide you, because then you will know that all the information that I'm presenting here are all factual information. They are all real, So there is this very popular gene called the NR3C1 gene, right? Again, we all know genes are the basis of our heredity, right? The genes are what we inherit from our mom and inherit from our dad. 50% of the genes come from mom, 50% of the genes come from dad, and then 25% gene comes from mom's mom and dad, and 25% of gene comes from dad's mom and dad, right? So genes are the basis of everything that we inherit from our parents and their parents and their parents and their parents. That's how we know that our eyes look like our grandmother's eyes. Maybe our lips look like our maternal granduncle's lips, right? Maybe our skin color is from, again, our paternal grandmom. So there are physical traits, but then from epigenetic research, now we know that the emotional traits are also genetically and epigenetically bound, right? So coming back to this new gene, NR3C1, NR3C1 gene was first observed. There were changes that happened to this gene while a certain mice population were separated from their mother, okay? So these mice, these small little mice, they were separated from their mother, okay? And of course, the mice became anxious, some of them became depressed, some of them felt extreme insecurity, some became really jittery, but all of them showed that there is a gene called NR3C1 gene, and there was a change in that gene after they were separated from their mom. This change is what we call as methylation. You don't have to know this. You only need to know that the gene underwent a change. There was a change in the gene expression. And this same gene change was observed in a lot of suicide victims. And when there were postmortems, they realized that NR3C1 gene changes belong to all those suicide victims who had, listen to this carefully, who had history of child abuse, okay? And it's not that it only belonged to the suicide victims. The reason they could find out in the suicide victims is because they could do a postmortem, right? Otherwise, how are you going to detect? But then recent researches in methods like karyotyping also show that all the people who go through childhood abuse go through genetic changes. These changes happen in this particular gene, NR3C1. And this gene can then be passed down through the ova to the child which is going to be born, which means the real gene change is passed down. It's nothing hocus pocus, right? It's real gene changes that is going to pass down, okay? So NR3C1 is something you need to note down so that you can look at it. There were studies by this particular scientist called Dr. Rachel Yehuda. I keep speaking about her a lot. I love her work. Dr. Rachel Yehuda is her name, okay? And she studied the Holocaust survivors. And then she observed that all of the survivors of the Holocaust, of course, it was a traumatic time for them to go through all of that. All the survivors of the Holocaust underwent gene changes, epigenetic changes in the gene FKBP5. I've written down the name, FKBP5. And then what happened is the second generation of the survivors, meaning that all the children and the grandchildren, they showed similar symptoms of anxiety. They were more predisposed to post-traumatic stress. They showed hyper awareness and hypersensitivity to their own environment. They felt that they were more victims of being bullied than other people, other children. So the expression of victimhood and feeling all these PTSD symptoms, post-traumatic stress, was stronger in comparison to other control groups, right? So there was more predisposition to anxiety, diminished levels of cortisol, because of course cortisol was used up a lot in the previous generation, and they had more PTSD, they had more anxiety, and most importantly, they had the exact gene change in the gene FKBP5, meaning their parents and their grandparents' gene changes that they went through in the Holocaust, they had inherited them, right? Even though they were not a part of the direct trauma, even though their lives were beautiful, even though they could live good lives with their parents, yet their personality and their relationship with the world and their relationship with their own parents was affected because of an epigenetic inheritance, which they were not a part of, right? How are these important to parenthood? How are these important to you becoming a parent who can look at these changes and determine a different future for your child? Let's look at that, okay? I wanted to tell you that, okay, I wanted to tell you that this is the line I wanted to tell you towards the end. At the bottom, don't worry, the opposite of inherited trauma is also possible, inherited healing. Right now, I've given you all the bad news in the world, right? All the bad news, which is basically how trauma is inherited, right? And how you are helpless because you are the parents who are sort of transmitting it and passing it down to your children. But then the opposite is also possible. If you look up at this article, and you can find this article on the internet once again, it was in Science Daily, and the article is funny actually. It says the right combination of parents can turn a gene off indefinitely, okay? Which means that two parents, and this was done with some worms. This was done with some worms. Look at this last line, and my cursor is pointing. By mating nematode worms, they produced permanent epigenetic changes that lasted for more than 300 generations, right? So when we change as people, our epigenetic changes are reversible, by the way, right? Everything that we have inherited are reversible. When our epigenetic changes are reversed and our spouse's epigenetic change is reversed, and we not only come together to produce the child, but our child exists in the world already, these epigenetic changes can cause permanent change in the child. Permanent change in the child in the sense that all the traumas that we happen to carry from our ancestors, right? By changing them at our physical body level, we can stop that not only from transmitting to our children, but when we heal, our children automatically stop carrying them, right? Epigenetic changes are reversible. That's the magic, that's the miracle I wanted to present to you through this article, that we can actually stop these epigenetic changes and reverse the whole cycle, not only for us, but also for our children, okay? Everyone has got this? Everyone has got this? You can always type in. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being there with me. Great, great. Thank you. So I'm going to, yeah, so we have a question, but I'll address those questions later. I'll address the questions later for sure, right? So I'm going to present to you a few cases. These are cases that I worked with, and these cases will help you understand the depth and the importance of this work, especially as to a parent, how it applies to a parent. So let's take the case of Lisa, okay? Lisa is 28-year-old, okay? Her place of birth is London, and she also lives there. And it's a medically diagnosed case of schizophrenia. Now, as you know that there are different kinds of schizophrenia, right? In her kind, what she goes through is She has a lot of auditory hallucination, which means that when she's out on the road, she feels a lot of people are speaking ill about her, calling her by bad names, calling her by names which are derogatory as a woman, right? And she thinks that all of those are real. So she sometimes comes home and sinks herself into the bathtub to simply drown those voices. It's so much for her to even go through all of that. And sometimes she feels that all of these people are chasing to abuse her or molest her or maybe rape her. This is what she feels all the time. So I meet her mother, and I try to figure out what is basically happening. And I'm talking to her mother, and I'm unable to find out any link as to what may have happened in her childhood. Her childhood was all good, and she was a loved child. I'm trying to figure out what exactly goes wrong. What is a developmental error, because I'm not able to find out the reason. And then somehow I go and ask, okay, tell me about your mother. Is there anything that your mother has gone through? And she says, well, my mother was a part of, the partition, and she came from Pakistan, and I don't know much about that, but I know that, she went through a hard time. And I said, please go back and talk to your mother, because, you know, uh, we might find something there. And she says, well, I don't feel like talking to my mother because, she's very consumed in herself. She's always been consumed, and um, she's like a narcissist. I said, all the more reason. She's consumed in herself, meaning she couldn't be available because there is something in her life that probably consumes her. We have to find out what consumes her. And then she says, but doctor, don't you think that's going like too far? And I said, no, that's not too far. Please go and ask her. And then she goes, and then she tries to have a heart-to-heart conversation despite her rejection of her own mother. And then we get to know that her mother, when she was going through all this partition, and then there were riots going on, and all these atrocities that were going on, women were being abused and molested and raped. And she saw all of that. She came out unscathed, but she saw all of that. And that she would describe the horrors of that partition in a way wherein she heard all these noises and voices and names, and she, all of that, and she could never, ever, ever talk about it because it was so horrifying and shameful and full of, hatred and rage and all of those feelings together. She could never, ever talk about it. And that consumed her. That consumed her, and that led to becoming self-consumed, and she couldn't be available to her daughter, who rejected her by calling her a narcissist. And then that travels down one generation later to Lisa, right? Because Lisa starts experiencing all of that. So I tell her mom that please take Lisa once to India. Please bring her once to India. Please make her meet her grandmom. She has never met her. Let her listen to the story, and let her also absorb her grandmom, because she has never experienced. And that's what keeps her disconnected. So initially, she didn't want to connect, but then later she did, okay? And then we found a solution for her, right? I want to take you to the next case. Next case is a little complicated. Please stay with me so that you know what it is, okay? Yeah. I have an interesting question, but I'll answer it towards the end. Right. So here we look at the case of Bob, okay? Bob is actually 8 years old. And Bob, at the age of 8, starts experiencing a lot of separation anxiety. So he cries at school, he starts missing his mother, he has nightmares of his dad being killed. He also has panic attack when left alone. He suddenly becomes really hyper vigilant, and he feels lonely. He feels really, really lonely. Now let's go to Bob's mom, right? So this is by doing a technique that I do called traumagram. I make an entire gram, as in like we have Instagram, we have traumagram. I make an entire diagrammatic presentation of the entire history of trauma in the family, and we locate where it comes from. So from the traumagram, we see that Bob's mother doesn't quite like her father. She rejects him as someone who is weak. And that happens because she sees her mother, this circle is her mother, because her mother always saw her husband as someone weak and benign and docile. That's how she saw. So she starts identifying with her mother, and that's what she feels about her father, right? Now let's look at Bob's mother's father, who is Bob's granddad, okay? Bob's granddad. So Bob's granddad loses his dad. Look at this, look at my cursor. Bob's grandfather loses his dad in a robbery. That's how he's killed, okay? Which is Bob's great-grandfather. And then what happens to Bob's great-grandmother, which is his mom? So she's so overwhelmed. She's so overwhelmed because she doesn't know now what to do. Everything is gone. Her husband is lost. Property is gone. Money is gone. It's being robbed. So she tries to commit suicide when Bob's grandfather is 8. Look at this carefully. She tries to commit suicide when Bob's grandfather is 8. He loses his dad at 7, and at 8, when he's 8, his mom tries to commit suicide. Imagine what happens to this boy. Think of what happens to this boy. This boy, of course, withdraws. He goes into his shell. He's unable to experience the world because everything inside freezes and shuts down. The only thing he can feel is a lot of fear. He loses his dad, like Bob has nightmares of his dad being killed. He is also fearful of losing his mom, right? Like Bob has these separation anxiety and anxiety attacks. And all of that remains in him, and it affects his precursor sperm cells, which eventually, when this woman is born, who is his daughter, gets epigenetically passed on to Bob at the exact same age. So mind you, ages repeat. So Bob's mom rejects her father. She does not know the story that her father goes through or the impact it has. So she blindly rejects him. But what does that rejection bring forth? It brings forth in her own son everything that she rejects in her father, right? Which means every time we reject our own parents for the stories we have not known, or for the stories that have impacted them but we have not acknowledged, we somehow find those same stories, symptoms in our children. When our children show us a certain symptom, that symptom is about our life, is about something we have not acknowledged, is something that we have not explored, we have not known. And it might very well point towards our own parent whom we have rejected, excluded. So everything that we exclude, our children bring it up so that we can look at that and heal. Instead of looking at your children's behavior from a pejorative point of view that you need to correct it, look at it as a signal, as a representation of something that is being shown to you, by which you can go and look into your own intergenerational line, which remains unresolved, right? So everyone got it? Yeah. Questions coming in. Thank you. Patience, everyone, so that I can tell you how the healing happens. Great. Thank you. Right. Now let's go to the last case of today's evening. Okay. This is even more exciting. As you may know, there are so many children nowadays who are diagnosed as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And we have more and more of those, right? You take them to a doctor, the next thing they do is they just give them Ritalin, right? Ritalin is a drug that is given for ADHD, right? So here we have a case of a little boy, once again, who shows signs of aggression. He hits other kids, and he shouts at his parents. He also has insomnia, by the way, which means he's unable to go to sleep. And he has multiple breakdown in the school itself, right? So we see a lot of anger and a lot of scattered explosive energy in him, right? So when parents bring their children to me, I don't work with the child because I know that the solution is not with the child. The child cannot go through the process. If the parent heals, the child automatically is going to heal because the environment of the child is the parent, and the environment is going to affect the genes and reverse the epigenetic changes which the child is carrying, right? That is one of the answers to the question wherein how does the child heal? The child heals because the environment of the child is the parent. When the environment changes, the epigenetic changes which have happened earlier reverses, right? So I work with the father. I try to find out what is wrong with the father, okay? Here we are going ahead with finding out what exactly happens. So he has ADHD and all of these symptoms. So then the father, so I asked the father directly that all these emotions that your child is representing, all these explosive, scattered energy, where do they come from? Do you have any idea? And then he says, no, I don't. And then I ask him my series of questions. I have a series of questions that I ask to people to find out their intergenerational trauma. And then I get to know that his father, look at my cursor, his father goes to the war in Vietnam, okay? And then he comes back and then he impregnates his wife, okay, after coming back from the war. And then this man is born, okay? Then this man is born. Now, this man is not only angry with his father because he seemed to be really, really aloof and away and disconnected, but he also cannot have all the love from his mom because his mom was always ill, stressed out, and in great fear. So he had to take care of mom, but mom couldn't be there for him as much because she was ill, right? Why is that happening? Why is that happening? Because this man, look at this figure. This man who goes to the war in Vietnam sees all the horrors of the war, sees all his comrades being killed, all his friends being killed, and he sees all of that atrocity and blocks himself, right? He blocks himself because that's a lot for him to take. That's a lot for him to absorb. So when he comes back with all of those horrors. He comes back as a changed man. He comes back as a man who is present in this marriage, but then he's also absent because he is haunted by all those images, by all those feelings. And his wife is, of course, stressed out, right? All of these are going here to this man, this son, all that aggression, horror, all of that. And then let's look at why he goes to war. So when you go one notch up, you see that this man who is our little boy's grandfather, this man was one of the 10 kids of his mom and dad, right? Great-grandfather, great-grandmother. This man is one of the 10 kids. So he could, imagine when you are one of the 10 kids, it is easily said that, oh, we had 11 children, we had 12 siblings. But then the second or the third child is unable to ever experience his mom and dad fully because there are always other people. They don't get 100% attention, and they somehow sometimes feel that they don't belong, they're insignificant, they are just one of those. That's the feeling, right? And then because of all of that angst and anger, he goes to war. So you see how this anger is actually traveling, right? And who suffers? This boy suffers because of all that anger which is in this man, which remain unexpressed, unacknowledged in his system to his own mom and dad, and it goes even one notch up, right? Clear with this case? I would want a yes from all of you. Clear with this case? Great, great, thank you. Amazing, thank you. Right? So why is all of this happening? Why is all of this happening? When we look at when we look at it spiritually, we get to see, you may imagine that you love your child more than your child can perceive, more than your child can understand or imagine. So in your relationship with the child, you always feel that you are the greater lover, you are the greater lover. But then the truth is, your child is the greater lover, because your child is taking everything from you, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that you reject, everything that you not acknowledge, everything that you throw away, everything that you shut down, everything that you numb out. Your child is absorbing and taking all of that. Why? Because it loves you. It's doing that for you out of love. Our children take everything from us, even the things we exclude, because that's their way of bringing the entire family together. Because in a child's love, no one is ever excluded. Everyone is included, right? So with every symptom that your child shows, that symptom belongs to a door of inclusion that the child is bringing out for you and trying to show you that, see, this is the truth. But you see it as a child's faulty behavior, dysfunctional behavior, and then you disacknowledge it, or you shut it down, or maybe you numb it out, right? But what if you could look at it as a voice that the child is bringing forth for you, that you could look and see that, okay, where does this voice lead me to in my own generational line? Is there someone, are there my own parents whom I have rejected, not acknowledged, shut down, numbed out, right? So that's a great lesson, that our child loves us so much. Our child is always a greater lover than we are. And because a lot of conscious parenting is unconscious parenting, right? All of these things that you're passing down into your child is unconsciously. You have no idea that you are passing them down, right? Now, through this, you are able to know. Hence, a lot of conscious parenting, a lot of these behavior-based mechanism and skills and interventions that you learn, that how to be a conscious parent, how to be a good trainer, how to educate your child, how to give them skills. You are also at the same time bringing all of these programs which are unconscious, and then you are passing on to your child. So what's your responsibility then? Your responsibility is to become a healed parent, because a healed parent is the greatest insurance a child deserves for a future beyond our imagination, right? We all create insurances for our child, I know that. But to be healed yourself is the greatest insurance you can provide your child beyond any imagination, okay? Now, let's come to, oh yeah, this is something I wanted to show you. You can go ahead and read that. I had spoken in 2020 about how the COVID trauma and the COVID anxiety that we experience, how that can get passed on to our future generation, our children, and how we can stop it from happening. So a lot of you might be wondering, how does that happen? How do you heal? How do you stop? Go and read this article, read this interview in the New Indian Express. Can trauma be borrowed from apocalyptic times? Simply Google and it'll appear, okay? Can trauma be borrowed from apocalyptic times? And you can also go ahead and watch my TEDx talk, right? It's in the official website of TED, and it's called Conflict and Evolutionary Byproduct. And as I write here, that my major focus is how environment affects gene expression and how that travels down the intergenerational line, which is what I talked to you about today. And my main objective with this upcoming course, the systemic medicine course, through which I'm going to change people's outlook, purview, and management skills in order to integrate everything we know about ancestral lineage, intergenerational trauma, ancestral healing into a more practical application-based tool. So everything that you learned here today was for you to intellectually understand what happens in the generational line and how does it affect us and affect our children. However, in the systemic medicine course, I bring all of that along with numerous tools to bring it into, to develop it into a practical application-based mechanism for everyone, each one of us, not just therapists or trainers or psychologists, but for every single person. And I simplify it, I break it down like I broke it down today. So all of you could understand actually, right? Isn't that so? So that's what our new course, the systemic medicine course, is all about. Okay. Now, I wanted to tell you how I work with intergenerational trauma, how I also work with children. Basically, I work with the parents, but then how do I work? The first thing that I do is I help them make a traumagram. Just as I said that we make an entire tree, we make an entire genogram where we look at all the different traumas and we see where this trauma is coming from and what is being inherited. So first we make the traumagram, right? Then secondly, we also educate our clients. We educate our clients because our clients also have to understand where it is coming from, right? Not only we will have to release it, but also intellectually they have to get, okay, this is where the picture becomes complete. Like you saw the different pictures, like you saw the different traumograms, right? So once they have the complete picture, they can agree that, oh yes, this is where the trauma is coming from. So we do a traumagram and we psycho-educate people, right? Then secondly, point number 2, all of these trauma, as you know, they are held in our body. Remember how we are in our mom's womb, or how mom is in grandmom's womb and her body responds to grandmom's body and all that stress at a physical level, isn't it? So locating all that trauma at a physical level is the most important thing. So locating at a somatic level, we locate all of these trauma at a physical somatic level, right? Thirdly, we use methods like family constellation, regression work, integration work, breath, imagery, movement to cause release and catharsis of all these traumas stored in different parts of our body, right? Because of course we have to utilize all these methods in order to release that. If you don't release it, then you continue to carry. Now, after the release, you have to consolidate this release in the form of a practice so that every single day you provide your body with a different environment so that all the epigenetic changes that you have brought up, that you're reversing now, they can be consolidated. So everyday practice or regular practice, right? Traumograms and psychoeducation, locating at the somatic level, using breath and imagery to cause catharsis and release, and of course, practices to consolidate the positive healing effects that one experiences in a session. And most of the time, I achieve all of this in just one session, by the way. Okay, so and yeah, you will also be able to do that. I wanted to show you a brilliant traumagram by one of my students, and he's an intergenerational therapist today. He was in the last course on systemic medicine course and family constellation. And here you see he has made a brilliant traumagram. I won't go into the explanation of it, but this is how a traumagram looks like, where he brings in the client and then the client's mom, client's dad, figures out different traumas that are present and is able to diagnose all the symptoms that the client brings in just one traumagram by locating it. And then, of course, we move into the process. So traumagram is one of the most beautiful, brilliant tools I've ever come across in my life, wherein I can simply look at it and look at everything in the intergenerational line. Believe me, sometimes we go to as far as 4th generation, 5th generation, 7th generation in a traumagram. That is the length we can go to in a traumagram. And of course, when we do a family constellation, which is basically a process to heal ancestral trauma, we can take the help of traumagram and do it, okay? So I wanted to tell you about all of this is now coming up in our course, the systemic medicine course. All of this is coming up in our course now, the systemic medicine course. So before I go there, just give me one moment. Yeah, I need to stop sharing. Yeah, because I wanted to take you through how this course looks like. Okay, how this course looks like. Yeah, there are quite a lot of questions. I will answer all of them. I promise. Please hold on. Okay. So just stay with me. Just stay with me. I will answer all of these questions. Okay, so this is how our course website looks like. Okay, so the course website, almost probably all of you might be knowing, is called the systemicmedicinecourse.com. And you can already see two parents, pushing happily their kids. So this is our course website, the Systemic Medicine Course, Trauma Healing with Family Constellation, level 1. I also wanted to let you know that although Family Constellation is just one of the methods of ancestral healing, there are many, many, many different methods that I teach. It's one of the primary methods of healing ancestral and intergenerational trauma. Okay. And this course consists of 12 live classes, right? 12 live classes by me, 4 support sessions by all the beautiful supervisors who are present here. We have 10 supervisors, amazing supervisors, who are going to support you through your own healing and through your own learning. And we have 4 recorded lectures by me on 4 different themes on ancestral and intergenerational trauma. And on top of that, we will also give you a few bonus classes. We won't be declaring those bonus classes, and they will be recorded. Don't worry, you don't have to come for that. But then, yeah, we will be giving you a few bonus classes as well on specialized topics like addiction or eating disorders. So, if you can also look at why you need to attend this training, because again, this training talks about epigenetics, right? It talks a lot about epigenetics, and you will find everything that you will be learning in this modality in this training. You will. So all the learnings are written down here in 12 different beautiful points, and you will be using more than 30 different tools in order to work with intergenerational healing. And the best part is the curriculum. So if you go to the curriculum part, you will see that every class is divided into these different topics. There are quite a lot of topics, right? So class 1, class 2, even the dates are mentioned: 4th of February, 11th of Feb, 18th of Feb. So through all these different classes, you will be able to cover and read through these topics. These are very interesting topics. I request and urge you to go through these topics so that you know that, oh, these are the things that are being taught, right? So even we have mentioned the dates of supervision and support sessions. So everything is already mentioned. You only need to go there, right? You only need to go there and read about it a little bit. And lastly, of course, you can read about me as well if you like. You already know me, so you can read about me as well. You can read about my work, and you can find my article also there with the New Indian Express. You can watch my TEDx. Now let's go to the pricing. Okay, so currently we have the early bird price going on. The early bird price in Indian currency is 1,35,000. 1,35,000 is the Indian currency. People can, of course, go online and convert them into dollars, because, of course, the dollar rates keep on changing, or maybe into your own currency, which could be pound or which could be dinar. So you can check that yourself, because the currency rates keeps on changing, exchange rates keeps on changing. So you need to first check that. But yes, you can pay in your own currency as well. Okay. All you need to do is you need to go here, click on early bird. And by the way, early bird is getting over on the 4th of Jan midnight, which means from 5th of Jan onwards, it's going to be 1,50,000, right? And here there are a few additions. So not only we have these classes, we also have 6 months access to recorded videos. I'm going to extend these 6 months. Don't worry, I'm going to extend the 6 months. Then we have a Facebook group to clear all doubts and queries. So there will be an active Facebook group where people can just keep on posting. We will share traumograms. We will share our constellations. Post-workshop assistance in a moderated Facebook group, right? Discussions of cases and demonstrations post the workshop. So we can keep updating the group with a lot of demonstrations. And of course, you will have in-hand assistance from all the supervisors, 10 beautiful, marvelous supervisors who have learned with us for more than 3 years. So all you need to do is go to your early bird and press select there. Okay. When you press select there, you have this option of signing up. So you only need to sign up. And when you sign up, you can simply go ahead and make the payment. Okay. Now, before that, all clear. I hope all clear up till now. I hope everyone is clear on how to go about it. Oh, by the way, I wanted to also mention that we have some amazing EMI options. Okay. However, this EMI options, we are able to only make it for the national participants who are from India as of now, because we are still working on finding EMI for international participants. But yes, we have some amazing EMI, which you can avail if you happen to have credit cards. Okay, which you can go and check out in the payment scheme itself. It will show you there. So I wanted to go ahead and share my screen once again. So now you all know about the systemic medicine course. I hope all of you have the poster, the mails and messages, and the recordings will also be sent to you. I just wanted to tell you that until you make the unconscious conscious, until you have the courage and the strength to look back and make the unconscious conscious, it will redirect your life, and you will call it fate, and so will your children, right? And so one thing that I wanted to tell you is, please note down this number, +91 93157 99766. This is our course coordinator, Garima Verma's number. This number is also mentioned in our website. And for all queries, all kinds of queries, all support, you can simply reach out to her. Even support during payment, and you want to know about EMIs, and you want someone to guide you through the payment, she'll be there for you. Okay, so all you need to do is note down this number. I'll just lastly guide you through steps to register and heal your lineage, right? So as I said, visit the systemic medicine course link, right? www.thesystemicmedicinecourse.com. Go to pricing and select early bird before 4th of Jan, because post 4th of Jan, it's going to go up. Then you sign up. And then if you are an international participant, meaning someone who doesn't have an Indian bank account, you simply go to PayPal, because we have two options. One is Razorpay, one is PayPal. Go to PayPal. If you're an international participant with a non-Indian bank account, just go to PayPal and you can make payments from there. And if you are an Indian or have an Indian bank account living elsewhere, then you can simply go to Razorpay and you can pay the payment, right? You can make the payment of the early bird price. And you can contact our course coordinator, as well as for all assistance, this number, as I said, +91 93157 99766. Okay, this is also the number from where you may have received today's messages, right? Some of you, or many of you, maybe. Right. So I wanted to, before I go ahead and answer the questions, I will do that. I wanted to ask Garima, you have been helping us so much, and Garima is taking care of all the different logistics at this moment. We also have other team members. Garima, do you have something else to add?
No, Gaurav, I think you have covered everything. Just one last thing that I would like to add here is that, come for this program in order to, transform your life if you are looking for self-healing, and actually help your clients to transform their lives, because this program particularly is truly life changing. So don't even think twice. And this is right now, this month is just the right time to get yourself registered for the program, because after this is the best deal that you're getting right now. So if you have any questions, any doubts regarding the program, regarding how to build up a clientele, how is it going to work for you, I am available on the mentioned number. I've also shared that on the chat box. You can save this number, and I'm available to address like individual queries on phone. But just go through it thoroughly. That's all.
Right. And again, I wanted to add, not just for your clients, but for yourself, because it's also about doing the work yourself, and think of this also as a gift of a lifetime to your own children, that too in Christmas. So think of this as something that you are going to give to your children. As I said, that the healed parent is the greatest insurance that one can provide to their children, right? I also want to invite one of our other team members, and he has been actively working with us and helping us with so many things, with so many of my own articles and writing work. Benjamin Miller has been helping us so much. Ben, you have something to add, and thank you so much for your contribution in bringing this class together.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you everyone for being here. That was a very special experience and it felt very meaningful. I come from a background of psychoanalysis, so we have a big overlap, and it's a good example of this marriage of Western and Eastern that Dr. Deka is doing. But as he mentioned, all the science at the beginning, and we see that there's a lot of different ways to access the same source. So there have so many different modalities, but so many of them are coming back and looking at trauma and childhood. So we know for a fact that this is a good place to focus your attention as a practice.
Right. Great. Thank you, Ben. To tell you all, Ben is also the founder of Healers Magazine, HEALERS. Ben is also going to put down the link of Healers Magazine. I would like all of you to, in the chat box, please check in the chat box. And please do go and subscribe to Healers Magazine. It's one of the best places you will find all forms of integrated, systemic, alternative work around therapy and healing coming together in just one place, and you will get to read about writers from different parts of the world in Healers Magazine. So please go ahead and check out Ben's fabulous work there.
And feel free to send us any writing if you're a practitioner and you want to share your wisdom.
Right. Great. Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. So let's go ahead and let me address the question. Okay. Great. I will try and answer all questions possible. So don't worry. Just let me go through them. Yeah. Is it possible to reverse them after a child is born? Yes, it is possible to reverse after a child is born, because in the first 10 years of the child's life, or even in the first 15 years, the environment of the child is the parent. So when the parent changes and heals, then those genes that are responding to the environment, let's say how a gene responds to violence and domestic violence, trauma, and all of that, when the environment changes, those same genes can now respond to a more peaceful, calmful environment, and the epigenetic changes can be reversed. So yes, even after a child is born, when you heal, your child heals. Right. Could you talk about BRCA1 and 2 gene mutation? So this is interesting. BRCA is the gene for breast cancer. So believe me, in reality, there are no genes for breast cancers. There is no gene for breast cancer. There are only epigenetic changes that happen to the BRCA1 and 2 genes. It does not code for breast cancer. That's the reality, which means that the changes in the gene makes them breast cancer genes. They are not breast cancer genes from the very beginning. So it is environmental, which means the inner environment that one has carried through, either in their own life or in their intergenerational line, has led to the changes in the BRCA1 and 2 gene, and then they have become the breast cancer genes. Originally, there is nothing called a breast cancer gene. That's the truth. I'm curious to understand how Bob is healed in this case. Beautiful. So Bob is healed by those 4 processes: the traumagram that his father goes through, and education. Father goes through. Then of course we go ahead and work with the somatics, and then we cause release by doing a constellation, and then we give practices to consolidate all those healing practices, all those healing movements, right, by the parent. So I explained you the 4 different ways. Isn't all transgenerational trauma also happening because without our conscious awareness, we are repeating childhood patterns, which then end up with our children reacting in ways we have seen before, which made us repeat the pattern in the same place? Yes, that is right. And all of this trauma is happening because we don't look at them as weaknesses. We don't know where they come from. We think that they begin with us, but they don't begin with us. They begin much before us, before in our parents or in our grandparents' life. And we simply keep on repeating them because our environment does not change. Our behavior and our inner chemistry, our neurology does not change, right? What's the psychosomatic reason for ADHD? I explained this case fully. There can be various reasons. We can only find out the real reason when we do a traumagram, right? Because ADHD is the diagnosis, It's not that all ADHD children will have the same symptom. So I want you to understand this as well, that a diagnosis means nothing. The same symptom can have different stories in the parental and intergenerational line. Diagnosis limits us from exploring those stories because we give a tag: oh, he's schizophrenic, oh, he's bipolar, oh, she's she's mental, or she's narcissist. These are tags. We don't look at the stories behind. So diagnosis stops us. And instead, symptoms, when we look at them as different doorways, helps us to go inside the door and find the house from where the story begins, right? That house is our intergenerational line. Does every kind of issue, say anger, breathing issue, etc., require healing separately? All these issues can be interconnected and healed through one sitting. So one of the answers that I give people is, all your issues are like the pieces of a domino. Different pieces of a domino. When you click one domino, all the other pieces, they start falling together, right? So when one thing is healed, it has a cascading ripple effect on all the different parts of the domino, and they begin to heal. So yes, it is possible to heal in one sitting, but whatever we discover in one sitting, one has to also practice that regularly. Remember, the 4th point in that entire modular structure was practices which will consolidate the healing, physical healing effects, right? Okay, there's an experience someone has shared. I'm diagnosed with vaginismus. I have been in therapy for the same, and I feel I am slowly healing. Sometimes I feel lucky because I'm preparing myself totally before I receive my child. I can resonate with all that you shared. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you so much to me. Thank you. Right. Oh, this is very interesting. What if the client has no information about the previous generation? This is one question, believe me, I get all the time. What if the client has no information about the previous generation? And you will see the magic of this happening when we do a family constellation. Even if you have information, you will not have information of your 5th generation, 7th generation. We can still find out the story by doing a constellation. It will still come to light. People have gone back and questioned their grandparents and great-grandparents to find out stories that they have never known by discovering in a constellation. And then they were shocked. They said that that's true. I never knew it. How does that happen? To find that out, you have to come to the course and find it out. Oh, the same question again. Thank you. Will the notes be provided for the 20 live classes we attend? Yes, you will get the notes. Right. Will this course be helpful to people who have nothing to do in therapy line? Today, when we did the masterclass, every one of you typed yes, which means every one of you understood. Every one of you had an illumination, had an insight. Every one of you are going back home to change something about yourself. So why not? It is for every one of us. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be a psychologist. It doesn't have to be a trainer. It's for every one of us. What if we are thinking of adoption? How does intergenerational trauma work if we don't plan to have or raise children? Absolutely. Adoption is a topic I cover profusely in my course. And it's a huge topic, actually, so I can't bring it here. But yes, adoption is one topic which I address, and I get a lot of cases of adoption, and I work with them. What is the youngest age to get healing done? You mentioned for first 15 years of child's age, parents can get healing done. Is it safe to say that 16-year-old person can go for healing himself or herself? See, anyone can go for healing as long as they're able to absorb the healing. When a child is brought to me, I try to see, first of all, that can the healing in the parent affect the child in a positive way? And then I see that, okay, does the child need any other form of support, right? So that depends. Dr. Deka, do you teach the 4 steps of intergenerational healing in your upcoming course? Yes, that is exactly what the point is, that we learn everything in these 4 steps and so much more. What is a family constellation? Please go to my YouTube, subscribe my channel, Dr. Gaurav Deka, and there are numerous videos on what is a family constellation by me. Okay, it's a method to work with intergenerational and ancestral trauma. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you. Right. What if the children are grown up and adults now? Do they get healed? Great question. I had someone who was 56 and who came to me, and I was working with her. And in the session, all her life, she could not accept her mom. And then in that session, she has a breakdown, and she says that I could never see her in that light. I never knew her story. I never paid attention to, right? And of course, that became a healing moment for her. So even if she was an adult, all the healing happened to her. And then she could also affect and go to her children and go and tell the stories to her children, even if her son was 32 years old. There are so many people who have lost both their parents, especially after COVID. How do you make a traumagram with them? We still make a traumagram with them. That's what I'm telling you, that it's possible to work with intergenerational trauma. It does not matter who is alive and who is not alive, right? In fact, we work more with whoever is not alive, because the effect of the dead is even more on us. Okay. How can an undiagnosed mental trauma of mother be passed on to her children and grandchildren? So I request you to go back to this class again, because in the very beginning of the class, I had mentioned how the mother carries the child in the womb and how the trauma gets passed on. Are therapists like family constellation or intergenerational trauma given due importance as compared to therapies like CBT or REBT? By due importance, we have to first of all find out who are the people who are giving us due importance, right? For example, I happen to be a psychoanalytic expert. I also am a CBT expert, but at the same point of time, I felt that trauma work is something I need to bring more into my life and more into the lives of my clients. So even if integrated work and alternative work is something that MCI or RCI does not recognize, which is Medical Council of India or Rehabilitation Council of India, these are practices now that are coming up more and more, because we understand that trauma cannot be talked out. We cannot talk out trauma. However much one may do CBT or REBT, we cannot talk out trauma, and that's a fact, right? And as a medical doctor, I can tell you that. And trauma can only be relived and released from the body, which is somatic, right? How relevant are cultural and regional differences in this area of therapy? And would the course address the same? Oh, lovely. I have worked with people over 25 to 30 different countries, and I bring all of those experiences because I understand that everything is systemic. By systemic, we mean that the entire world, you know, there will be people from let's say, the States, or there will be people from the Middle East, and there will be people from the East, then there will be people from the West, and all of their cultural landscape are going to influence the work that we do. It's going to be even more interesting to work with different cultures, because then we get to know that these themes of intergenerational trauma that we see are common throughout different cultures, although there are certain nuances here and there, but then they are common, right? There are certain orders to intergenerational trauma that are common throughout. Right. Vishruti writes a very beautiful line. She says, the dead is just waiting for someone in line to look at them and heal the entire line. Your work has really helped me do that. Thank you. Oh, that was a message for me. Thank you, Vishruti. She says, the dead is just waiting for someone in line to look at them and heal the entire line. Your work has really helped me to do that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vishruti. Can we also heal physical issues of the body? I am going to do a masterclass on disease and illness, physical issues. I will tell you how physical issues can be healed. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for all your questions. Oh, Simran says that I wanted to cry when you said a child is always the greater lover. Thank you, Dr. Deka. Thank you so much, Simran. I look forward to seeing you at the course. So thank you so much, everyone, for making time for today's class. And I truly, truly hope that you take up the course. Once again, if you have any issue,